Good Thursday to you, everybody, in com/gov 664. Welcome to, well, it's still week one. And I am uncharacteristically without coffee. Okay, I wanted to make a short video for you here to talk a little bit about your film review assignment/assignments that you'll be pursuing throughout the course of the semester. Now, your weekly discussion sections by way of point values will give you about 30% of the points that you need in this class. And then coming in next is the film reviews that you'll do, 4 of them, and then the final exam. I wanted to say a little bit about the film review and how it's going to go and what's expected of you. No caffeine, just sparkling water. To get you started, since this is a 8-week course and it is therefore fast paced, I'm going to check in with you, at least once, maybe twice a week to make sure that you're on track. Okay. So that's what we're doing here. All right. Let's talk about the film review. You'll find in Canvas in the assignment section a link to the film review as the overall assignment, and then specifically to this first film review. It's due May the 26th, which is Monday evening at 11:59 p.m. So actually, sorry, that's Tuesday. I tacked on an extra day. So it's, a little more than 2 weeks away. Here's how the assignment works. And I mean, in the big sense. Okay. You are asked to watch and review 4 films throughout the course of the semester. In the assignment section, you will find the introduction and the explanation of this assignment for all of the films. It's going to be the same. I'll keep reposting it. And then after that, you will find a film list. There are 12 films on there for you to choose from. You choose 4. Now, how you choose to watch these and when you choose to watch these, completely up to you. I'll stagger the due dates for the film reviews throughout the semester so it doesn't all come piling on top of you at once. But if you want to watch and then maybe rewatch, just depending on how you interact with the visual medium, then that's okay too, right? It's completely up to you. All right. But about every 2 weeks, you'll do a film review. All right. Here for each of them is what you're going to need to do, what I am looking for. You'll need to produce a and here your writing is critical. I want you to write and rewrite these so it's nice, it's tight, right? You'll produce a 3 to 4 page review, a 12-point font, double spaced, in which you discuss the film and you discuss at least, now if you want to put other things in here into the review, that's fine, but at least the following 3 main areas. Number 1, a well-written, tightly focused summation of the historical context of the story portrayed in the film. Now, what do I mean by that? This means both what the film is about and a little bit about when the film was made. You can ascertain as much, if not more, about a time period in which a piece of communication was produced than the time period that is the focus of the piece of communication. Do you understand? In other words, if you read, I don't know, pick a story. I'm looking for. Okay, here we go. Here's one. So here's a book I've been reading lately. It's called The Middle Ground Indians, empires, and republics in the Great Lake region, 1650 to 1850. Okay, so this book is about the meeting of Europeans and native peoples in that region, um, all the way up through Canada, all the way down. All right, but the book itself was published in 2011. If you read a work carefully, or if you watch a film carefully, you can find out a lot about the interaction of people to media to well, so should we put government on the top? I don't know, government to people to media, something like this. In 2011, you can find out as much about that story as you can find out about the story of Europeans coming to the North American continent and encountering native peoples. So when I say historical context, I want you to, yes, make your main focus the historical setting that's in the film. What's the bloody film talking about? But also say a little bit about when the film was made. Now you might be wondering, well, how do I do that? Look it up, dig it up. Okay, dig up a little bit about the film. All right, that's number one. Number two, a well-written, tightly focused discussion of the film's major themes. Now, if you want to break these things down into sections in terms of your paper, however you want to organize it, yeah, that's fine with me. All right, what do I mean by major themes? That is, a portion of the review should include references to specific scenes, characters, actions, and actors that illustrate the theme of the film, themes that you can identify. Now, if there, you're going to find as we go through the major themes in our text in MAP and in MIP that there are themes that you'll read about in the text that you'll see in the films, and that's in part why, significantly in part why I picked the films that are on this list. You don't have to match the themes in the book to the themes in your books to the themes in the film. But if you see it pop up, you go, oh yeah, that's just like, Gravier and Dunway said in such and such a place. So you can do that or not. Okay. But what you should be looking for right out of the gate, what's the major point? What's the major focal point of the film? Now remember, where communications are concerned, okay, and especially when you start getting into media, all right, most of the communication, most communications, and some would even argue all, are artifices of other things. What do we mean by that? An artifice is the front-facing, demonstration of the thing. So, for example, the word art is shorthand for artifice. So when you see art, okay, here we go. This will work again. So here I'm reading this book, Middle Ground. Nice glossy cover. All right, so here is a painting. I think this is of an Iroquois. All right. Okay, this is an artifice. This, first of all, is not an Iroquois. It's a representation of an Iroquois. Remember, the representation of the thing is never the thing. And if I were well versed, which I'm not, in the symbolism of the Iroquois, I might be able to quickly decode what the purpose of this armband is, what the purpose of this wristband is. What's this figure holding, and what's the purpose? What are the purpose of these 3 feathers as opposed to 2, as opposed to 4? Okay, that's an artifice. That's a representation of a larger concept. That's really the beating heart of communication. We do that in words, we do that in clothing, we do that in actions, and so on and so forth. What are the themes of the film? What's the film trying to communicate to you? It's trying to make a point. Now, you don't have to agree with the point. All right, you don't have to disagree with the point. Just hone your skills in the exercise of identifying the point and then point to specific things, like say the armband, and I would assume it means, you know, some sort of power, because things that are put around arms, are especially where male figures are concerned, are meant to accentuate, to represent the musculature of the arm. All right, this is often the point in art. But going back to the film, hone in on specific scenes, actions, and the behaviors of actors that exemplify, that demonstrate the theme. All right, and then finally, number 3, tell me about your thought about the film as artifice, as it is representation of the major themes covered in it. As you grow and develop as communicators, and this is especially true for you folks in strategic communication, one of the skills that you should focus on and practice and practice, and by the way, it's just that, it's practice. You just keep improving. There's no place that ta-da, you arrive. One of the skills that you should focus on and practice, especially in your writing, okay, is being able to communicate the why you came to a conclusion, what evidence brought you to this, and then the logic of the whole thing. Whether you try to get some distance between what you personally like and what you analyze. All right. One way to think about that is make a conscientious effort in the language that you use in your mind to distinguish between I feel and I think. For this exercise, I mean, if you didn't like the film, that's fine. You can say so. But for this last bit, I want you to summarize what you thought about the film and then be able to reference why. So, okay, this did a good job representing these themes because da 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 da, or this did a not so good job da 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 da. You'll often find that where communications fail, they don't connect with people. It's because they overpromise and then under-deliver. They say they're going to do something, a communication, which of course comes from a communicator, but then they don't, and they leave the audience, the receivers going, what? Like, we're going to explain this all to you, and then it doesn't get explained. Okay, so hone the skills of getting that professional distance in your work product between what you feel and what you think. And it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to have preferences. All right, but as a valued commodity on the communications market, you're there to flex this is what we ought to think because, and then you have these reasons that center on the thing being analyzed. And here's the important part, not on your feelings or your reaction to the thing. All right. So for each of the 4 reviews, those are the sections that I'm asking you to drill down on. Now, look, if you go over 4 pages, am I going to penalize you? No. If you're under 3 to 4, probably, because I don't think you're going to be able to cover these sections in less than that. I just don't think it's going to happen. Okay. Very, very briefly, let's take a look at the film list. Maybe you've seen some of these, maybe you haven't. I'll tell you just a teeny weeny bit about them, and you get to decide what you want to write. Now, all of these films are available on a multitude of platforms. Some of them are on Netflix, I think, still, which is no cost, except for the subscription, which is going up. It's like, yeah, wait. I got rid of my Netflix subscription. But you can find them on YouTube. You can find them on Amazon. And if for some weird reason you can't find them, then, go to the next one on the list. Okay. All right. Very, very quickly. Number one, We Steal Secrets, the story of WikiLeaks. All right. This was done in 2013. It focuses on Julian Assange. Um, the film explores questions about, who has the right to control information when it comes to the government, the media, and the people. Should there be some things that are kept from the public on purpose? Now, if you watch this film, you have got to, of course, talk a little bit about what's going on with Mr. Julian Assange right now, because the situation changed since the making of this film. And it might even be interesting if you dig out a few interviews and, what does he think about everything that he did and the consequences thereof. All right. Number two, All the President's Men. This is a classic film. Stars Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. It's based on Woodward and Bernstein's book by the same name. All right. It's from 1974. And it tells the story of how the media, and in particular the newsprint media, really started focusing in on politics in Washington, D.C. And that's not to say that they didn't cover politics, but in this instance, that this episode marks a watershed. That things changed in how the media behaved in relationship to government officials, because prior to this, mostly the accepted standard was, well, if a politician is doing something that seems a little, then that's his private life. That's her private life. We leave that alone. I mean, it was well known, for instance, that presidents like President Kennedy was having a whole string of affairs with people, some of them famous like Marilyn Monroe and some of them not. This was not a secret amongst the press in Washington, D.C., but they just, okay, we just don't talk about this to the public. That changed with this episode. It's a well done film. It's a well paced film. And if you watch this one, I would expect that you say a little bit about where we are today. Okay. Number three, Snowden. This one is kind of sort of like We Steal Secrets. It is it's biographical, but it's not literally like this is everything that happened to Edward Snowden. Right? This is the story of a young man, very patriotic young man, who goes to work for the NSA and the CIA and finds out just how much data is being gathered about just ordinary American citizens. And it again raises the question, how do we deal with terror and terrorism in the post 9/11 world? How do we stop bad people from doing bad things if we don't collect information about them? And in collecting information about them, is it okay then to collect information about everybody? Okay. All right. The Post, number four. This is sort of the administrative flip side of All the President's Men. This has Glenn Close. She's no, is it? Is it? No, it's not Glenn Close. Anyway, the actress will come to me, but Tom Hanks and then the actress, very powerful portrayal. The Post lays its hands on the Pentagon Papers. These were papers that had been produced over a long series of time, a number of years, in which the advisors at the Pentagon were saying, hey, we can't win Vietnam. Meryl Streep, actually, I'm sorry, the actress just came to me. Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks. So this is a non-winnable war. And yet, the Johnson administration continued, and part of the Nixon administration continued to send young men to die there. And the question was, well, should we publish these and tell everybody that, hey, the military people for a long time have been saying this is an unwinnable war. We need to get out. And yet the government continued to do what it did because it didn't want to embarrass the United States. Okay. So here again, is there some information that should be kept secret? like stuff that pertains to war. And you know, you might want to have a discussion if you watch this film about what's going on right now. I think it's a perfectly legitimate question. What is going on right now with the war with Iran? Are we at war with Iran? Are we not at war with Iran? Are we waiting for what exactly? And what have we been doing? Should the public have full access to the information, or for the sake of national security and consistency in foreign policy, media should stay away? All right. Citizen Kane. This is a classic, and probably this is the movie that set the standard for how a lot of movies are made. Orson Welles, who's all over this film. This is this is one that's usually ranked certainly in the top 50, often in the top 10 of all time best made movies. This is a portrayal of sort of an amalgamation of William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, for whom the Pulitzer Prize is named. All right, and this is black and white, but it's beautifully filmed. And this film drills down on the phenomenon of what was called yellow journalism. It was called yellow journalism because they were papers printed on very cheap paper that oxidized very quickly and turned yellow. So they were just meant to be consumed and thrown away, kind of like today's internet content and social media. And it delves into the question of the neutrality of media, of those who are in it. Should it be sensationalized? What about just media? What about the hype that goes with clicks and views, and in this case, newspaper buys? Okay, this is a classic. Good Night and Good Luck. It's a George Clooney film in which he also stars. And this takes a look at the legend, the first got his start in radio, then television, Edward R. Murrow, and the head-on collision, the trifecta collision between what people ought to know about their government, which is where Murrow was at, okay, what the government doesn't want people to know, which is where Joseph McCarthy was at, and what the networks want people to see because of the money. And this is exactly where we are right now. So this film takes a look at one of the early and most notorious collisions of those three forces, and it's very well done. Right. A Fragile Trust, Plagiarism, Power, Jason Blair at the New York Times. This film takes a look at the touchy subject of affirmative action and turning a blind eye to misbehavior in the media because of identity politics. Now, this one is often controversial for people because there are those who say, and there's arguments for this, that Jason Blair, who's an African American writer, was hired by the New York Times because he was a great writer. And then there are those who say, no, he was hired by the New York Times because he's an African American writer. And the people in the street saying, your paper's not diverse. And the New York Times going, oh, golly gee. And it turned into a train wreck for the New York Times. Okay, true story. And actually, Jason Blair is in the story. They interview him extensively. All right. Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. Now, this is an interesting film, too. Dinesh D'Souza, who is no friend of the Democrats, not by any stretch, who was fined heavily and then put in jail, community, center prison, for making illegal campaign contributions. And he got out and he's like, oh, yeah, you stuck it to me. Watch this. And he makes this. Some call it a documentary. I'm not going to call it that. I'll let you decide what it is. Is Dinesh D'Souza grinding an axe? He's a very conservative commentator. But the question this raises is, who's the media? If anybody picks up a webcam or a camera or a keyboard and starts blogging away, does that make them the media? And they boom get that First Amendment protection right, and they can say whatever they want about the government. Now, the claims of Dinesh D'Souza in this documentary, in this film, are radical. Now, the question is, are they true? And if they're not, is this just libel? And should he have been prosecuted again? So if you watch this film, I would expect you to say a little bit about that. Okay. Number 9, The Killing Fields. This film was done back in 1984 and takes a look at what reporters do when they're sent overseas to gather stories and get them back to the United States. There are a few major themes here that pertain to the relationship between the media, the government, and the public. First and foremost is, and I sympathize a lot with this film because I've been in this situation. It takes a look at Sidney Schellenberg from the New York Times. What's ethical in hiring and you just call it is what it is, using local people to get to the stories? Because when you're a reporter, you're in the media and you're overseas, especially in a situation of crisis. All right, if you play your cards right, and if there's not some terrible stroke of luck, you're going to leave. You get to leave. You get to get on that plane, back home you go. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, I always found that aspect of working overseas very disorienting. I would arrive on this big, giant, shiny aluminum tube that was an airplane, stocked full of movies, food, and drinks, step into just chaos with people starving and buildings flattened and bombs going off, and the human suffering that entailed. Stay a couple of weeks, stay a month, tough it out, and then get back on the elongated, shiny, flying time machine and come back. That was very disorienting for me. So, what kind of ethical limits should the press have when overseas? It is the public's demand to know everything and to get the inside story. Is that sufficient justification for using people that live there? And then when you leave and they have to stay and they suffer the consequences. And that's where the main body of the film really hits. And let me give you a little trigger warning. Are they severe consequences for Schellenberg's fixer, a man named Dith Pran, whom I got to meet once at an event. Remarkable man. Okay, good film. Films 10, 11, and 12. Now, there are 3 films on here that deal with the public, the press, and Nazi Germany. And it might be fair to ask, Dr. Gardner, do you have a Nazi Germany fixation? Well, I can answer that. No, I do not. So why 3 films? Here's why. Number 1, oh, lo, do I tire of hearing the reference in the media to he's a Nazi, she's a Nazi, that's a Nazi, Trump's a Nazi, 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 Nazi. And as an historian, which is what I trained in first before I got to communication, I did do a lot of study in modern European history, and that included the history of Nazi Europe, really not Nazi Germany. The reason that horrible episodes in Western history, like the Holocaust, were horrible episodes. That is, they were as bad as they were, is everybody helped, or a lot of people helped. It wasn't just the Germans, the French, the Italians, the Romanians, the Bulgarians, the Czechs. They rounded up a lot of people too, and said, "Oh, hey, what? These folks are getting rid of all the folks we never liked anyway. Okay, here they are." All right. So something that Europe and Westerners need to face up to. So that's the other thing. But specifically for these 3 films, This was a an episode in Western history in a democratized, very advanced, very sophisticated country, technologically, industrially advanced, lots of Nobel Prize winners, and just things went completely off the rail. How? How was it that the media let this happen? How was it that the people let this happen? How was it that the government exerted the control that it did over both of those entities, the media and the people, to make the horrors of the war and the Holocaust happen? So each of these three films takes a look at some aspect of those questions. The first one, Sophie Scholl. This is about a group of students that decide, enough is enough with this government, and our media is doing nothing. We're the media. We're going to start telling people the truth about what's going on. And so, long before bloggers, and we think that we just do things that nobody else did. No. All right. There have been times in history in which the media is failing the people. The government has swallowed the media, the reason for failure, and then the people become the media. And it doesn't always end well. It doesn't always end with a great blog or a book or a segment on NPR or wherever. And this story, Sophie Scholl, is one of those stories. Downfall. This is a up close, sort of very tight examination of what happens when individuals who are right adjacent to the epicenter of the evil and the chaos that's being perpetrated on both the media and the people, when they do the government is perpetrating this on the media people, and they do nothing. This story is the story of the last days of Nazi Germany, told from the perspective of Trudel Junge, who was Hitler's personal secretary. And you see a little bit of an interview with her in the beginning, and I think in the end of the film. And she wrote a book. This is based on her book. It's a fantastic book. It's been translated into English. And she said, I was just 25 years old. I really didn't read newspapers, and I should have paid attention. And I didn't. And I stood there and I watched all of this, and I said nothing and I did nothing. Why? Okay. And then finally, I debated long and hard about putting this film on the list, because this is perhaps one of the most where he's a Nazi or he's not a Nazi, and what the public does or doesn't do about it. This is probably the most intense exploration of that, but in a way that caused quite a stir. Right. This film is called Look Who's Back. It's and all of these three films, by the way, Downfall, Sophie Scholl, and Look Who's Back, Irrwiss Wieder. These are German films with English subtitles. My German is really even not that good. All right. I mean, I was in Austria a little while ago, and I was like, voice de Wese, where's the bathroom? Like, but anyhow, this is a comedy. This is a comedy. It's filmed in the style of Borat. If any of you who remember that film by Sacha Baron Cohen, the comedian and voice actor, in which it's based on a book in which the producers of the film got an actor, dressed him up like Hitler, and they did both. They filmed staged scenes, and then they took him out in public dressed like Hitler and had him interact with the public to see what would happen. And I think that this film got just, I mean, it was received very, very well. And then the powers in Europe were like, oh my word, we can't have this thing banging around. So it's really it's available if you wanted to, if you ever want to try to find it. It's available on DVD. The only place that I can find it is somebody has posted it on YouTube. I don't know if they pirated it or not. I'm hoping not, because YouTube is pretty strict about taking down pirated stuff. All right. So you click that link that's in the assignment area, you'll go right to the film. Okay. This film raises the question, and I think again, especially in the time that we're living in, with the reaction between some members of the media and their portrayal of the president, he's a fascist and so on and so forth. Excuse me. This raises the question of what would happen if a real fascist showed up. And Hitler is the fascist of the fascists. What would the media do? Would they line up to try to take him down, or would they see opportunity for a lot of views, clicks, and money and run with it? And you will never, the way this film ends will leave you sort of either scratching your head or feeling very weird. It's got a very weird ending. But it touches on some extremely important questions about what the media does in relationship to the people, and what the people are doing in relationships to governments, and issues like attitudes towards immigrants, attitudes towards people who are different than one another, all sorts of things that we're dealing with here in the United States. Now, at the bottom, I have a little warning to you. All right. This film is a comedy. It's a dark comedy, and it contains a brief scene of simulated animal cruelty and sparse use of the N-word once or twice, I think. But if I want to encourage you, though, to give this film a chance, and especially in the instances of both of those things, the simulated animal cruelty and the use of the N-word. Part of the point that the filmmakers are trying to make is it's Hitler. What would you expect Hitler to do? But the central question is, what does the public do when they hear this guy and when they see this guy? All right. It's a very interesting film. Okay. That's my half an hour plus some. If you have any questions about how to write this, again, at least 3 to 4 pages. You want to go longer, that's fine. I suggest that you write and rewrite so you have good, focused, tight writing. No AI. I will be checking for your sake. All right. It's good for you. Okay. First one due May 26th. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for being here. I'll look forward to the rest of the semester, and I will see you next week. God bless.